Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily on this, the last day of the general election campaign.
My name is Sam Coates and with me is Jack Blanchard of Politico, and this is the final day of campaigning. It's July the 3rd and it was Wednesday the 22nd of May, 6 weeks ago, that Rishi Sunak triggered that shock general election.
I'm happy to say it's slightly less rainy this morning than it was 6 weeks ago. And this, I think, is our 30th daily episode, Sam, the last of the campaign. But it will not be the last daily episode because, frankly, we're having far too much fun to stop. And basically, the story doesn't end tomorrow. You know, as a journalist, you're focused on the campaign and everyone's got this goal in sight of the 4th of July. And you sort of feel like you can collapse in a heap at that point. But that is obviously far from the truth. In fact, the story is about to get bigger and more interesting and more important after tomorrow if the polls are correct. So no slacking off. We will carry on with the daily episodes at least for a while. There won't be one tomorrow because we don't record on polling day itself. We'll let you get on and voting, but we'll be back on Friday and Saturday and who knows how long after that, Sam.
We're both at home for the final push. Have you got an easy one today, Jack?
There's nothing easy about today. No, there's a huge amount of planning and reporting that needs doing as we prepare for tomorrow night and all the stuff that's going to come afterwards. Got lots and lots of reporters working very, very busy on lots of different stories. What about you? You putting your feet up? No cigar, watch a bit of telly?
No, I got back at 11:30 from the Boris Johnson event, and as soon as we finish recording this, I'll be heading into Westminster for rehearsals for Friday's election programme, and then it's the biggie. At exactly 5 o'clock today, we will unveil the final YouGov polling prediction on Sky News. This is where they call who will win, by how much, and what happens in every single seat in Great Britain. They literally bet the company share price on it. So good luck, guys. I've got no idea what it says. It's one of several of these polling projections or MRPs that are going to come out today. But YouGov always feels like the biggie. So you'll want to tune into Sky at exactly 5 o'clock. What are the three things we're going to be talking about today, Jack?
Well, it's pretty simple today, isn't it? We'll be talking about the Tory party and that surprise appearance by Boris Johnson himself at a Rishi Sunak rally last night. And has that led to a slight narrowing of the polls the Tories say it is doing and they're hoping that it is doing? We'll talk about Labour, the last big bang from then. Keir Starmer's touring the whole of Great Britain in one day today, or at least stopping off in the different nations of Great Britain anyway. And we'll talk about what the smaller parties are doing today as well. Lib Dems will have one more stunt because they're gonna. And speaking of stunts, Nigel Farage is headed to a boxing ring because he knows he's going to get some good pictures as well. So basically we're going to take you on a whistle-stop tour around the different campaigns, starting with the Tories because they are still very much in charge and they are very much headed to the southeast of England again. We've talked about this so many times now, but it's so telling that the Tories see the main battleground of this election as the home counties, the Tories' safest part of the country, no longer safe. Rishi Sunak will be campaigning in Hampshire and elsewhere this morning. And they've certainly grabbed attention, shall we say, at the very end of this campaign by wheeling out Boris Johnson last night at a rally in Chelsea. Nobody really expected him to appear. He didn't quite appear alongside Rishi Sunak, did he, Sam? You were there. Why don't you tell us what it was like?
There was this late night rally at about 9:45 at the Royal Army Museum. He went on stage to warn that a Labour landslide victory is pregnant with horrors, derided Nigel Farage as a Kremlin crawler, and warned that Keir Starmer was going to put up your taxes and whatever the opposite of enthused. He warned of Starmer-geddon. It was a pretty extraordinary moment, I have to say, Jack. This is Rishi Sunak pulling the emergency ripcord the day before the election by summoning the guy that he ousted from Downing Street. You remember it was the Rishi Sunak resignation along with Sajid Javid that really started the dominoes toppling a couple of years ago. And it's a risk because, the crowd went wild for Boris Johnson.
And there was a great big omission at the heart of Boris Johnson's speech, which was, of course, largely about him and his 2019 victory and what he did in government and the dangers of Labour Party and all the rest of it. But there was no great big endorsement of Rishi Sunak. And there wasn't even a handshake or a kind of moment where you could see them together. So this is clearly an attempt to sort of get back those 2019 voters that the Tories have been focused on for the last couple of years. But it is a gamble.
I like the idea that Rishi Sunak could summon Boris Johnson. I mean, it's an interesting choice of word. I mean, you have to think Boris Johnson has obviously chosen to do this right at the last minute. And whose interest is it really in? It has to be Boris Johnson's interest. You know, there have been these reports over the last few weeks that he is still interested in some sort of comeback in the future. He wants to be the man who saves the Tories from oblivion, saves the Tories from Nigel Farage. And he suddenly positions himself as this last minute hero with this big speech that gets the troops excited, as you say, shows him in stark contrast to Rishi Sunak. They were clearly more excited to see him than they were the actual Prime Minister and leader of this campaign. And if we do see a narrowing of the polls, if we do see the Tories do a little bit better than expected on Thursday night, then Boris Johnson can put his hands up and claim credit for that now and say, look, you were headed for this catastrophic 200-seat defeat. And actually, it wasn't so bad. And that's all because I turned up in the end. And yeah, I'm the guy that did it. And if it doesn't happen, well, it's not Boris Johnson's fault because he only spoke at one speech on the whole campaign. So he certainly can't be blamed for the Tory defeat. So I feel like it's pretty much a win-win for Boris Johnson, fresh off the plane from his various holidays. And I'm quite surprised Rishi Sunak thought that was a good idea. But I guess, as you say, desperate times, desperate measures. We should talk about this possible narrowing of the polls. If you do look at, some people say there is a bit of a trend that the Tories are doing a little bit better. Certainly the Labour vote has come down slowly but steadily over the past few weeks, and maybe some of these projections we've been seeing are a bit out, and maybe the Tories will do a bit better than expected tomorrow night. Sam, what do you reckon?
So the polling projections have been sort of key in setting the story of this election, and we had the sort of first of the big final ones yesterday with Salvation. But the point the Tories were keen to hammer home is that the fieldwork was conducted kind of and finished a couple of days ago. So if there is any narrowing of the polls, it won't capture that, which is just as well because the Salvation MRP polling projection had the Tories on 64 seats, which is at the bottom of their worst nightmare. That is an extinction level event. Let's see what the others say today. Within 48 hours, we may never say the three letters MRP again if these projections prove to be wrong. Inside Conservative headquarters, they insist that their data shows that these warnings of a supermajority are working. They know the result isn't in doubt, but they think that this fact that just a small number of votes in a large number of seats could make the difference between a Tory hold or a Labour gain is absolutely key.
What's useful about that campaign message, Sam, is that it is to some extent true. You know, there's always very marginal seats in an election. There's always a lot of seats where just a few votes, by which I mean maybe 1,000 or something like that, can swing it in the other direction. And therefore, the difference between a colossal Labour win and a sort of reasonable Labour win genuinely isn't that big. And the difference could be made in how people make up their minds over the next 24 hours, or even, as we were saying yesterday, in the polling booth itself. And it is that which is still giving the Labour Party jitters. And I think the problem for Labour, well, it's a nice problem to have, but it is a problem for Labour, is that expectations are so high and have been set so high by these extraordinary MRP predictions that if Keir Starmer ends up winning on Thursday with a sort of 50, 60, 70 seat majority, which is, you know, a decent win by normal British electoral standards, he's going to look like he's failed. And there is a danger for Keir Starmer that he's sort of cut off at the knees almost before he comes into Downing Street, with people in his party saying they had a chance for an enormous win. They haven't got it. You know, maybe his campaign wasn't right. Maybe they should have been bolder. You can sort of see that picture building up around Keir Starmer if he doesn't now land the sort of win that seems to be being baked in, because he doesn't come from a super strong position in the sense that the nation clearly doesn't love him. The party clearly doesn't love him, and therefore he really needs to pull off quite a big win now if he's going to hit the expectations that have been set.
Just before we talk about Labour, I haven't been able to get any predictions out of Conservative headquarters campaign figures other than they do think they'll be in the 3 digits of Tory MPs after Friday, not 2 digits. So let's see whether that's right. Anyway, Keir Starmer is doing a tour of all the British nations, so not Northern Ireland, starting in South West Wales today, then up to Scotland, then to the Midlands. So much about this phase of the campaign has been safety first, I have to say. And so we've been reading the rooms and trying to work out a little bit more about what they would do from Friday if, as everything's pointing to, including many Tories, they end up in government. Things are going to move very, very quickly, I think, on Friday. Cabinet appointments, I think, by the afternoon. There could be a cabinet meeting on Saturday, getting that out of the way before the England game on Saturday, sort of early evening. So expect big announcements potentially over the weekend as well, to suggest that they're getting off to a flying start. Quite how they organise themselves is going to be fascinating. One thing I'm watching incredibly closely is what Keir Starmer does with those 5 missions that he's been talking about for a couple of years now. How does he make them sound like they're going to actually happen in government? Are there big kind of changes behind the scenes? Does that cut across what cabinet ministers are meant to do? There's a lot of complicated thinking behind the scenes, and I'm told it's all proved quite sticky, and key decisions even 36 hours ago about how things are going to work after Friday haven't been made.
Indeed, and in the meantime, they'll spend the next 24 hours just hammering home Labour's core message now, which is that if you want this change to happen, you do actually have to go out and vote for it tomorrow. We've only had whatever it is, like 1/5 of the votes have been cast via postal votes, and we'll talk about postal votes in a sec, but the rest of them have not yet been cast, and if you don't go out and do it, it might not happen. And the reason they are sending that message again and again to people who are sick of the Tories, which is quite a lot of people if you look at the opinion polls, is that they don't want complacency to set in. And as we were saying, those few extra people turning out can make all the difference in a lot of marginal seats, and make all the difference into whether he gets a very big majority, a medium-sized majority, or even quite a small majority, all of which is still possible in this election. Let's talk about the smaller parties and what they're doing. Sam, Nigel Farage is back in Clacton. Where else? For his 2 events he's got today, one of which is alongside a famous boxer, Derek Chisora, well, quite famous boxer. We'll put pictures of Nigel in the boxing ring, no doubt, and he's heading to Clacton Pier tonight for some sort of big mass rally at the end to try and get the troops going.
Just worth pointing out, Jack, this is one of those weird election quirks where stunts like that become unstuck. We at Sky and no broadcaster can actually show Nigel Farage in Clacton because he is running in that seat. And any time that we show Nigel Farage in Clacton, we have to show all the other candidates. And therefore, all of the stuff at the boxing rings, all of the stuff today in the constituency he's fighting doesn't make it on telly.
Speaking of stunts, we better do the Lib Dems. Ed Davies headed back to the Blue Wall. He thinks there are seats that would never have dreamed would turn yellow that might turn yellow tomorrow. He'll be in Wiltshire, he'll be in Hampshire, he'll be in Hertfordshire. Have we got wind of what his final big campaign stunt is today, Sam? I don't think we know what it is at Politico. I'm very much looking forward to it. If he can top bungee jumping, then that's pretty impressive stuff. But I guess he's going to have to try now. Expectations are so high for Ed.
There is only hints that it will be a final big fun event that won't involve water, but will be peak Lib Dem. I mean, what a trailer.
We should talk about the postal voting fiasco. This is obviously quite a serious thing in some constituencies, and the Times reporting a particular problem in Kemi Badenoch's constituency, the new constituency of North West Essex, where, according to the Times, so many postal votes have failed to go out that it could actually affect the result of that election there if it's closer. I mean, we sort of assumed Kemi Badenoch would stroll back into her seat, but you know, in the world we now live in, that's less certain. And if it was tight, there may be enough postal ballots that have gone missing that would have to trigger a by-election there, which obviously has huge implications for her and huge implications for the Tory leadership contest, were one to be called very quickly after this election. So definitely one to watch. And I don't know, I was just thinking about it. I mean, everyone's blaming the Royal Mail for this. The Royal Mail, of course, privatised by the Conservatives back in 2011 when they first came into power, and it's sort of quite a neat epithet for the government, isn't it, that they made this big policy change at the start, and it's gone so well that they can't even organise an election at the end of it to sort of seal their demise.
I mean, the story around Kemi Badenoch herself is amazing. If she only wins by a small margin of error, or she doesn't win by a small margin, there could be the seat could be contested. And the fear of the Conservatives, some Conservatives, is that if the result is contested and there is a by-election a few weeks after the general election, then all the national resources of the Labour Party will pile into that one seat, and actually genuinely at that point she could be at risk. And that might mean she doesn't get a shot at the leadership, thereby changing possibly the course of the Conservative Party's future, which would be a wild consequence for this postal voting fiasco. And it's no wonder that people are very, very jittery about it.
Okay, so one more exciting thing for us to watch. Anything else, Sham? Shall we let them get on with their days? I think we're pretty much there, aren't we? Are we going to say goodbye until the day after?
I think so, but let's just plug what we're both doing for the election. Jack, what does your world look like from 10 o'clock on Thursday night?
Politico are having a watch party in central London, as there will be hundreds of guests there when we will do our journalism live from the party. We'll be live blogging through the night. We'll be making a podcast of the night's events. We will be doing lots and lots of news stories. At some point, I'm going to have to try and get some sleep because, as I was saying before, Friday morning is the busiest day of the year for me. Potentially a new government, potentially a Tory party in meltdown, potentially Nigel Farage headed to Parliament, all these massive news stories unfolding at the same time. So it's going to be a very exciting weekend. I will certainly be stopping to watch the football, though, of course, as I'm sure you will too, Sam. That must be absolutely top of your list, is it, over the next few days?
Top of our list is 26 hours of continuous coverage of the election.
26 hours!
Beginning at 9 o'clock on Thursday night with Kay Burley and a huge team bringing you all the results overnight. And then I'll step in with Sophie Ridge from 7 a.m. on Friday. And then we'll keep going through till about 10:15 at night. Please watch Sky News. Please read some of Jack's blogs and listen to the podcast. But we'll bring it all to you. And we will be back first thing on Friday morning with a special episode of Politics at Jack and Sam's with an early morning roundup of everything that happened in the general election.
That's right. So take the day off the podcast tomorrow, Thursday. Do go and vote. It's very important. Everybody cast their vote. And then we'll be back with you on Friday to talk about what on earth just happened. We will see you then. Have a fun.
Bye-bye.